The Witch Who Came from the Sea is the 1970s video nasty you've never heard of. Now, unlike most video nasties, The Witch Who Came from the Sea tells a very harrowing tale of a young woman named Molly. She's troubled, she's very childlike in nature, she's reactive and impulsive, and throughout the movie we begin to understand why her behavior is that way. But first, if you don't know, my name is Michaela. This is my channel, Let's Get Cynical, where we talk about film, cinema, and we get a little cynical about it, and we get a little bit into cynical kind of movies. So if that's something you would enjoy, go ahead and subscribe. I'm really happy to have anybody along. I love talking about film. I want to give a disclaimer before I start this video and say that we will be discussing really traumatic topics. We'll be talking about SA involving children, and I will be using the code SA for what it means, just so YouTube doesn't call me out, and it will have to do with children. So if that is something that you don't want to watch, please click out of this video as we're about to start the synopsis and review. This follows a story of Molly, a troubled young woman who seems very childlike in nature. Her past explains her sometimes naive, infantile, and reactive nature. Molly dotes on her nephews, Tripoli and Tad. She loves telling them stories about their grandfather, her dad, and his mysterious seafaring life. But her sister, Kathy, has a different story, saying that their dad was abusive and that Molly should know that better than anyone. Molly tells her sister to stop saying those things and that their papa never laid a finger on anyone. Molly and her nephews watch TV and a commercial comes on with a handsome man, in the 70s kind of handsome way, in a commercial for men's razors. Molly exclaims that he looks just like Papa, but then the man on the TV starts talking directly to Molly, asking if she wants to sail around the world with him. Molly looks pleased at first, but then reacts and seems to start having a panic attack. She heads to the liquor cabinet, saying, "Papa said it's good for what ails you." She dismisses her sister's concern and says nothing ails her and that she doesn't like it when her sister says those things about Papa. As she chugs down more alcohol, Molly seems to have a cross between a hallucination and a flashback of getting into some sort of adult activity with two athletic men. One of them, in the middle of such activities, says he's her papa, and the other refers to her as his little girl. This is where she loses the plot. One of the men passes out, and Molly begins to physically hurt the other one who said he was her papa. She sings a sailor's tune and goes into the bathroom, only to come out with a razor. She then begins to cut up his manhood. This scene was very interesting as the three all use nautical terms, and the audio is in an echoey, slow-mo, kind of dreamlike sound. Well, a nightmarish sound. Snapping back to reality, Molly rushes out of her sister's house to work. She says that Tad and Tripoli need to have heroes and that she doesn't care what Kathy says about their papa or football players. She heads to work at the bar, where a high-status celeb, Billy Bat, is enjoying his evening and has the hots for Molly. Her manager scolds her for being late, but he won't do anything to her because it turns out Molly and the boss are involved. In the morning, her boss, Long John, wakes up to a news report of two football players who were murdered. Molly is really affected by this and is in denial and worried about how it'll affect Tad and Tripoli. This reaction is a first glimpse at Molly's infantile, childish, naive reaction to things. The next scene has Molly telling her nephews about her amazing father and his magical ship, but cuts to a flashback of the beginning of her SA by her father. These scenes are very hard to watch and very uncomfortable. Molly continues her fantastical fabrications of her dad despite her painful memories. That evening, Molly's at Long John's getting ready to go to the celebrity Billy Bat's party, and Long John is very aware that he wants to sleep with Molly. It seems that they maybe have an open relationship, or that Long John, because of his age, understands that Molly, being so much younger than him, is going to have other men interested in her and doesn't mind her sleeping with other people. As Long John starts kissing up on Molly, we hear her fantasize the name of Sam Walter in a distorted voice, and she talks about his meaty thighs. We see a close-up of a pendant with SW written on it, confirming Molly's involvement in the murder. We cut to another very disturbing flashback of her childhood horrors. At the party later that evening, Molly finds a painting of the birth of Venus. Billy Bat explains that Venus was a witch born from her dad's baby serum that fell from the sky when he was castrated, and Venus was born from the sea, which I never knew. You gotta love mythology. While Molly is out having fun, Kathy is being interrogated by the police, trying to get info on the murder of the football players, as Molly left some of her clothing at the scene of the crime, which was made by her sister Kathy, who is a seamstress. Molly and Billy get to business, but get into a physical altercation. Molly goes full Amazon on him, breaking some of his hand bones. The two fall out of the room, causing commotion. Molly is helped by the man from the shaving commercial. The two start a fling, to the disapproval of Clarissa. Keep that in mind because that's important for later. Molly then goes to get a tattoo of a mermaid on her stomach, even though at the beginning of the movie she told her nephews that tattoos were dirty and that no one should ever have them. And y'all, it's the Sharpie for me. It is the literal Sharpie job on the tattoo and on the tattoo artist. She talks up her father to the tattoo artist, who doesn't care. She does reveal that her dad would say, "Come with me, Molly, and we'll get lost at sea," which was his code for when taking advantage of Molly. After her tattoo, she calls McPeak, the razor commercial actor. She asks if she can go back to his, and he says of course. Molly says a very telling line here. "Television makes people so much kinder, doesn't it?" This alludes to Molly's coping mechanism that started as a child of escaping through television, feeling safe through television. Back with McPeak, Clarissa, yeah, I told you she'd be important, she shoots up his car, screaming at him. After this incident, McPeak is at the police station, saying he doesn't want to press charges, but the police are actually trying to find out more info on the recent murders. A detective comes into the station later with clothes from McPeak's that belong to a woman, Molly. There, the pendant with the football player's initial is found. Kathy is at the bar to ask Molly about the clothes the police brought over, since they were hers. Of course, she gets super defensive and dismisses Kathy. Molly depends on alcohol and substances again to dismiss her pain. McPeak's commercial comes on again, but this time when he talks to Molly, he tells her to slice his throat. Alone that night, Long John asks her about when she lost her virginity, and she says she doesn't know, and immediately says that the pills meant to help her aren't working, to change the subject. But Long John persists in asking how she couldn't know. He's concerned. He seems to put it together even though she never elaborates. And the sad fact is, how can you know when something started when it's part of your whole identity and it was part of your upbringing? Later, with McPeak, her TV hallucination comes true as she works off his manhood with a razor. The irony. She wakes up covered in blood in Long John's bed as he freaks out about, you know, the blood. She says it was just her trying to remove her tattoo after she got drunk last night, and that she did it to herself, it's her own blood. She then gets mad and defensive at Long John for her own shortcomings, which is pretty much her defense mechanism. Kathy knows at this point that her sister did the murders and can't keep her cool when the cops come back over to question her. And I just want to talk about Kathy's handshaking. This actress, man, she really said, let me throw my whole body into this. We see the continuation of painful cycles as Kathy slaps Tripoli when he calls her a liar for telling the truth about Molly and also drowns her sorrows in alcohol. The pieces come more together for the police as they question Billy Bat. Long John finally confronts Molly on the murders since McPeak is now dead. After a mental break, we realize how traumatically Molly suffered at her father's demise. And in a cruel twist of irony, it turns out that he had the same mermaid tattoo in the same location as she has now. In an act of pity, we'll call it pity, Long John brings Molly alcohol and pills. He knows the cops are coming and she'll be booked for life. She compliantly starts taking the pills and drinking. Tad and Tripoli show up demanding to see Molly, even though Doris here, one of the other bartenders, tries to stop them. Molly cuddles with the boys as she starts to fade, ending her life with murmurs alluding to her true feelings and trauma. Police arrive, and Molly floats away at sea. So now that we've discussed the witch who came from the sea, what does it mean? What does it all mean? It wasn't until the second watch of this film that it actually really grew on me. The first watch was good, the second watch was better, and I grew more sympathy for Molly. If you haven't seen this film, even though we've just run through everything that happens in it, I would highly recommend it. It's so different to actually watch it. You can find it streaming now on Shudder, and I believe in some places it is available on Amazon Prime. But what it means is Molly had a really traumatic life, and the only way that she could cope with it is by making her father sound like a better person than he actually was. And instead of maybe accepting the fact that he did take advantage of her and abuse her throughout her life, she made him up to be something he wasn't in order to cope. Sometimes it's much easier to hide from the truth than it is to confront it, and in Molly's situation, we can definitely see that to be true. The feeling that this movie gives me is sorrow, sadness. It evokes an emotion that makes me want to cry. When you're first watching it, it's like, oh, okay, she's just killing guys. Whatever. And she's killing high status men, football players, athletes, actors. Like, okay, cool, whatever. But then you realize that because her father was such a powerful figure in her life, she takes it out on other powerful figures that are seen in the media to feel like she has some sort of a control in order to do maybe what she's thought about doing to her dad a million times and just won't admit it. It is a harrowing watch. It is very emotional, and I highly recommend it. Now, don't get me wrong, we do have moments. We do have moments in it, and the acting can be a little bit, off. This is actually a movie that I would think would be worth remaking actually today. I think it would be really well received. Who knows? I'd like to see it one day. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll have another video out next week. I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe and maybe share if you think someone would enjoy a synopsis of this film. I will see y'all later.